All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for showing up. Oh, we got one more participant. That's fantastic. Um, put in the Nearpod in the link if you can join us there. A couple things just so you're aware, this session is being recorded for learning purposes. And as we're going along with the Nearpod, make sure we're just following along with the Nearpod lesson, using the chat tool respectfully and appropriately, and also responding to questions and instructions the first time. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over today K-12 schooling options in the United States, because if we go outside the United States and look at there, they have different kind of systems set up. But what we're kind of familiar with, and I'm assuming most people will be employed in the United States, so we'll stick to that. Let me just jump over to the course real quick so you're aware of things. Remember, I just post the recordings and any pertinent announcements right here on the announcement page. If we go to plan, we see today's the 30th. We have a live class. This lesson is actually not due until the 12th. I don't know why this one. That's wrong. I'm going to move that to the 12th. Let me do that real quick. Glad I caught it. Okay. So next week is spring break. I hope you guys are doing something good for spring break. At least let's hope. And then we'll catch up with a live lesson again back on the 13th. So that's where we are right here. If we go into the content, we're in Unit 2. The Nearpod link's right there if you need to catch it there. The Lesson 2 quiz and Lesson 2 assignment. So there's actually 2 assignments this week. I'll be going over both of those in a little bit. As you can see right here, just 5 questions here, and then a little bit of research that I want you to do on the different schooling options and what maybe interests you the most and what we talked about today. So, okay. All right. So let's overview some stuff here. So the first thing is everything that you got to be aware of, right? What do they say? Follow the money all the time. It all comes down to, I guess, politics and funding. We did learn last time that some of our governing boards is like the legislature and school boards and people at the state, and there's a lot of politics that are involved in it. And politics are all wrapped kind of around the mighty dollar, right? And so that's very important as we kind of take into consideration what we're looking at here. So we have different types of schools. We have public schools, and under the realm of public schools, we'll go over what districts are, as well as what charter schools are. So Utah Virtual is a public school. It's actually a charter school. So we have that there. And then there's also some different schoolings like private schools. They're different realms of how those are organized. There's also religious schools, as well as homeschooling. So we're going to kind of go over each of those topics in a little bit more detail here. As we're talking about the political and economic kind of funding and education, there are some just key things you need to be aware of. So, some political debates that are going on, particularly are stuff like No Child Left Behind, data-driven environment. So, you may have heard of No Child Left Behind, just meaning that not that everybody should be at the same thing, but that we need to make sure we're serving all the kids. Another political debate is school choice. And school choice does kind of dovetail a little bit into what's called private school vouchers. So one of the big things, at least in Utah in the early 2000s, that's where they started coming out with more school choice options, like what is it called? Charter schools. And so charter schools started popping up everywhere, giving different school choice. So you didn't have to be required to go to the local district or a private school. So that gave another public option. But now the debate and what was actually passed this last legislative session was private school vouchers. So if you wanted to go to a private school, you could apply to receive a voucher. The program's still being worked out, but legislatively it's passed. Um, and so that's just a kind of a political debate that's going on there. The other one are sources of funding and how that happens. So you have a whole bunch of funds that come from the federal government. You also have the federal government also gave a lot of like what they call COVID relief funds to schools. So those are in play. You also have state funds that come from the state. You also have local school district, which is usually taxation of the property taxes that are within the district. Also, some private funds are given, like donations, that kind of stuff. Schools receive a combination of different funds, and then fundings. Some funding may be decentralized, while some others are what we call restricted. So you have restricted funds versus unrestricted funds. Okay, so there's a lot to go in it, but here's kind of the American education system as it's set up right now. You have preschool, kindergarten, which are lower levels, and we go to elementary school, middle school, or junior high, right? Depending on the area you live. And then you have high school. After you go to high school, then you can either start college or community college or technical college, master's, doctorate, all the way up to the top. Okay. So that's kind of how the system is set up right now. So we're going to watch this little video, talks a little bit about school choice, and then we'll talk about it from there.
What exactly is alternative education? It's designed to benefit students not succeeding in a traditional school setting. No student should have to struggle with getting lost in the crowd, falling behind, or being forgotten. At option schools, students thrive with small class sizes and an inclusive environment with supportive faculty that cares. At options, we don't believe in a cookie-cutter approach because every student is different. Why fit in when you were born to stand out?
All right. So very quick, but something to kind of break up things. But options, right? I think that's kind of the biggest thing is being able to give school choice to students, right? So like, I mean, I could ask all of you guys, why do you go to Utah Virtual Academy? You could all give me different answers, right? Like, I didn't like the regular district school environment. I didn't like, some other things like that. So there's all different types of things. So do you know how these do you know how these education options differ? So we're going to kind of go over how these differ. So we got some public schools, right? We got charter schools. They're either ran by the state or a district. You got magnet schools. So magnet schools. So for example, in the district I live in, which is actually Weber School District, they have what's called a magnet school. Somebody said I wanted to graduate early. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you could catch up in the summer possibly. Uh, so you got charter schools where you have options to do charter schools. That's a school choice option. So there's different magnet schools is what they're called in districts. So as I was talking about in Weber School District, where I'm from, they have a magnet school called uh, Weber Innovation Center, which is kind of like a online hybrid school where you actually go to school there, but you get to take classes and you get to take them as fast as you want. And they say you can graduate early. There's also magnet schools that do stuff like um, English is a second language kind of stuff. So there's like a Chinese immersion and a Spanish immersion programs that they've done like in elementary schools and stuff. So those are some choices. They also have the private schools that are a choice. They do cost money. But with some of these voucher programs, they may be less or be able to be free. These space anywhere from like religious schools, like Catholic schools, like I don't know if you're heard of like Juan Diego. That's a kind of a big Catholic school in Utah. There are also schools that are private that are for profit. That means they make money, and there's some that are non for profit. They also have compulsory education, which is kindergarten to first. And then there's some high school versus GED. We're going to talk about that. And then also homeschooling. So let's talk about in the realm of public school. Where does a liberal arts school fit in? All right, yeah. So liberal arts is more of like just an emphasis. So basically, meaning they're um, really looking into charter schools, and when we're looking at charter schools, most of them have like an emphasis, right? So like Utah Virtual is of course, technology, right? Online, right? So that's their emphasis. There's other ones that I heard that are like exploratory learning, right? There's quite a few schools out there like that. There's some that are liberal arts, right? Which means that they are more work on, or look at the liberal arts, take that kind of approach to schooling. There's some other ones that are like STEM based, so the science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and that's what they emphasize in. So a liberal arts school would be kind of a traditional liberal arts, and that's their emphasis. So hopefully that kind of uh, lets you know. And I'll try to touch on that a little bit more on that when we go into charter schools and their kind of emphasis that they talk about. But very good question. Um, All right, so the first one is like district schools. They're a public school district in a geographical location. Okay, so as I said, mine's Weber School District. So all of Weber County is not all of Weber County because there's Ogden in there too. They have their own district, but it has a geographic location where it's actually located, and it's not outside of that geographic location. So geographical unit for the local administration of elementary and secondary schools. Um, the second one is what we call a boundary school, which is the board decides by where you live what school you should go to. Okay. Um, they do have what they call open enrollment for magnet schools, which I was talking about, like uh, some things like some districts do have like STEM schools where you could, if you live outside those boundaries, you can apply for a boundary exception and go to that school because it's what they call a magnet school or the Weber Innovation Center or the dual immersion programs, that kind of stuff. Okay. But that's the district schools of choice, right? Is a magnet school. The other public school option that we have is what's called charter schools, like what Utah Virtual is. A charter school is a tuition-free school of choice that is publicly funded but independently ran. So their district is not over it. The state, they have oversight. If they're authorized by the district or by a university, then they are over them, but they're independently ran. Usually they have an educational emphasis. Like, as I said before, it could be liberal arts. It could be, different types of learning. There's some school there like Maria Montessori, which goes off the theory of Maria Montessori style. So that there's a lot of different options. So you can look out there if there's something, that would be right for you, or if you learn a certain way, you can kind of look at that, right? Um, and they did it because it creates and promotes school choice, a public option for school choice. Okay, the next one's a private education. Private education is schools that private school is a school that is not supported by financially by government, and which parents have to pay for their children to go there, usually by some tuition. As I said, there's some states now, including Utah pretty soon, that have like a program. They usually call it a voucher program, where it will pay for some of the tuition. These schools range anywhere from like religious schools, for profit, um, nonprofit schools, boarding schools. Um, think of if you're thinking about a boarding school, that's where you go and you live there, right? You board there, kind of like Hogwarts. So that would Hogwarts is a boarding school because they live there. And then also things like residential treatment centers. Utah has a lot of residential treatment centers, particularly in Utah County, where if you need just some type, you've maybe got an addiction or something mental or something like that that you need to work on, you could get sent to a residential treatment center. But these are usually private schools that have schools within them. Um, Okay, other alternative options that we have the GED, which stands for the General Education Development Tests. These tests are grouped to, there's four testing subjects. And if you pass it, it's kind of like almost alternative to a US high school diploma. Okay. It just shows that you've met the academic school level that you need in order to go on. And with quite a few colleges with a GED, you are able to get into some colleges, but I think it's kind of better to get a diploma because it helps you be more rounded. Homeschool. Homeschool is to educate children at home instead of sending them to school. Uh, Parents do this for a lot of different reasons. It could be religious reasons. It could be they don't like the school, whatever, and there's not a school that fits their child. But there's a lot of homeschool, like what they call pods or groups that get together and they go on field trips every week. And sometimes each parent takes a day or a subject and teaches the kids. And it's quite a big option that's actually become more and more prevalent since COVID. Okay, so for the couple of you on there, and if you haven't got on the Nearpod yet, I'm going to put the link in the chat. Of course, it's being slow. Come on. Maybe it will come up eventually. Um, but I was going to ask you a question. Maybe I'll just ask it and you guys can put it in the chat. So, which schooling option interests you the most that we talked about? Is there anything in there that, let me see if it will refresh. I hope. What interests you the most out of all these? It's not coming up. Sometimes this Nearpod pain. Any thoughts, guys? Which one kind of interests you the most? Because you're gonna have to think about this because this is part of your assignment. Um, okay, so you're here. You chose a charter school. Okay, very good. And the cool part about it is there's getting to be more and more options. Like for example, I didn't know if you guys are familiar. We do have a part-time program, and some of the students in here may be in the part-time program, which basically means they can go to school at their like district school or another charter school, and then they come to school here part-time. And so they get kind of a balance of I get to go to school a little bit, plus I get to take some classes online. And I really like that kind of blended format, right? Where you can have some social thing, but you're not like overly committed to that. So those are some really good options. Here's just some data on everything. Boarding school, I think the idea of sending your child off to a private institution for them to live and learn there all the time is very interesting. I agree too. I ran into somebody recently that they sent them to a boarding school in England. And so she went over and she actually had some family over there that kind of stayed over there. But she got a really good education over there, and it's kind of cool. I mean, this think about Harry Potter, but without the magic, right? Or those weird classes, but just like the regular class we do. I think it'd be very interesting and kind of actually cool to go to if you don't get homesick, right? So um, a lot of different options there. Okay, so you do have a lot of different options as you're rolling through, even when you go to colleges and universities. Um, but tuition is going up, and that's all I wanted to go over today. So, real quick, your quizzes today. We have all of these different questions here, and we went over all of them today. Pretty easy. You can go back in the Nearpod. Let me open this Nearpod back up for you guys to go through it that want to answer the questions right now. Okay, so that should be open for you to go to. The other one, the assignment number 2, is just list the school option that we discussed in the material that you'd like to research. So, Allie talked about a boarding school. I think that's great. Let's see here, Paris, you talked about a charter school. Like, research different charter schools. There's different charter schools out there with different emphases and things that may very well interest you. And especially as you're looking at possibly doing education as a profession, working at some of these schools would be the next step, right? So, would you want to be part of a boarding school, right? Staff, or you got all kinds of things right there. So, hopefully, this kind of interests you a little bit. But what I'll do is I'll stop the recording and I'll stay after for any questions. But I appreciate everybody's time today. Thanks.